our library. Thanks for joining this library's webinar. I hope you're all having a good Friday. We've got lots of people joining us today, which is great. And this is the first time that we've had a special Bookseller edition on libraries. So we're very excited. And we have this webinar today to celebrate it. And I have three lovely panelists. So I have Ian Anstice, who's editor of Public Library News. I have Zoey Dixon, who is a development librarian and a library manager at Lambeth Libraries. And then we have Nick Poole, who's chief executive of CILIP, which is the Chartered Institute of Library and Information Professionals. So yeah, thank you so much for joining us. And we will kick off in the next few minutes properly. There's just a few things to say. This will take about 45 minutes, might be a bit less or a little bit longer, and then we'll take questions at the end. So if you have any questions, if you put them in the chat box, perhaps if you could put them in capitals so I can see them a bit easier. We will also be recording this session. It will be available afterwards and free to watch. And we're also making the edition this week free for everybody to read for a week. So yeah, that feels quite exciting. And just one or two other things. We also have a promo code for librarians, which is ongoing. So that's 20% off. Then you type in library in capitals into the promo code for subscribing to the Bookseller. And yeah, and then we're getting ready to start. There's just one or two other things. I'd like to say thank you very much to our sponsors, Penguin Random House and Overdrive, who helped support this issue and make it possible. And thank you to everybody who contributed. And now I'm going to kick off with questions, and I'm going to start with you, Nick. And I'd like to know how you think libraries came out of the pandemic, how you think they fared over the last 18 months.
Thanks, Heloise. Yeah, and we've been reflecting on this a lot. I mean, I think we can be immensely proud of the way that libraries stepped up, both in the very early stages of the pandemic when, it was pretty chaotic. We didn't really know what was going on, and libraries made sure that they were there first and foremost for their users. Then as things settled into lockdown, they made the digital pivot, within a week and a half and started delivering value for people who were stuck at home unexpectedly. And even now, sort of moving into the kind of recovery process, it's just amazing to see what libraries are able to do as a kind of platform for recovery. So I think fundamentally, the whole pandemic revealed what the profession has always known, which is that really strong communities have strong libraries at their core. Even if the doors are closed, people need us both in person and online. So I think we can take real strength and pride, to be honest, from the way libraries reacted.
What would you like? Would you like to add anything, Ian?
Yeah, I'd strongly agree with Nick. I mean, I think there was something which I remember someone saying, it might have been President Phil Bradley of CILIP a few years ago, when he said to a shocked audience of librarians that the library is not for building. And everyone in the room went, oh, but the library is? Surely it is. But actually, if anything, for the last 2 years has demonstrably shown is the library isn't for building. The library is everything is for community, and it is the digital side. We moved from closing for buildings to thinking about online wine times, which we'd never done before, in 2 days. So we went through the shell-shocked period pretty quickly. I think in terms of, I think libraries came out of it stronger than anyone who would have been given the scenario of, right, okay, how are libraries going to do if they all shut a month beforehand, better than anyone could have considered. In terms of increased council profile, and indeed in terms of increased government profile, they've come out of it well, and the digital side has been transformed. Digital side is at least 10 years on, I would say, from where it would have been without the pandemic.
And Zoe, could you give us a perspective from Lambeth and how you think Lambeth coped with the lockdown?
Yeah, sure, of course. So yes, I agree with what Nick and Ian said. You know, it was a shock, and then you just had to kind of get on with it and do as much as you can as quickly as you could in the best possible way. And one of the things it's identified is the skills and the knowledge that your staff have. Also, it does show you kind of what skills that you will need for library work going into the future as well. I think it would really embed the digital tech information skills as well. In Lambeth, you know, people were editing and subtitling and just being really engaging online, which is actually quite difficult to do. It's not easy to do those things, whether it's live or recorded. And if you see examples of many libraries of their storytime sessions, their author events, their book chats, the wide range of things they do, it's just, you know, phenomenal, just the skills that we had and how we embraced it so quickly. You know, it was, and how can we reach our public as best as we can? And I think we rose to that challenge really, really well.
And you partnered with another library for the first time, didn't you, for
Yeah.
an event? Could you talk a bit about that?
So we generally run LGBT History Month events in Lambeth, and this year I have a friend who works for Sheffield Libraries, and because we were going to deliver it online, I said, why don't we partner up and deliver things together? and she went, that's a great idea. And that's pretty much how it came about. And it was a brilliant opportunity just to reach a really wide audience, to diversify the type of events that we run, and to partnership and work together. You know, our archives department worked together. They both looked at the LGBT communities in the Lambeth area and the Sheffield area, and we had a quiz which kind of pitted Lambeth and Sheffield residents against each other. Sheffield won again. We're coming back for you, Sheffield. And it was just I mean, the online events had a really big audience anyway. We saw people across the world in Japan, the US, Australia, but it was also nice just to see the local people and how appreciative of people who may not be able to access our events, especially being in a London library service. We sometimes have access to authors and publishers and things that people from around the country don't have access to, and we are able to share those services, which I think is really, really good and important as well.
And how do you think it changed the accessibility for libraries? Do you think it made things more accessible through digital means? Or do you think there's a danger that you might have lost customers who use libraries before? I'm going to start with you, Ian, because you're nodding. So.
Yeah, I mean, I think we were incredibly positive there. We thought we'd start positively and all happy, but I think the thing to bear in mind is for over a year there, our library doors were shut and locked. And so for people who are not so happy with the digital side, which is a reasonable proportion of our audience, we've not been there. And I think that's the scary thing for us now. And so I think moving on to possibly a question later on, is how we welcome back people. Some of those people are still concerned about mixing in social spaces. And so we're having to keep all this wonderful digital energy that we've had while having physical libraries open. So what do we do? And hang on, the digital side costs money, but we still need to buy printed books. So what do we do with that? It was a huge challenge when the library doors closed, biggest challenge of our careers, I think. But I think now, actually, for the next few months is going to be the same size challenge to us. Is one, how do we benefit from this? We've got all this energy, how do we keep that? but also how do we get for physical numbers back in libraries that by and large we're not seeing coming back at the moment, and that is, I think that's a concern for all of us. Sorry, I touched on quite a few different points.
Yeah, yeah, and we'll try and come back to all those points in some way. What are your thoughts on this, Nick?
Yeah, I mean, I'd really agree. I mean, I think the national messaging about the pandemic pretty generally has been fairly chaotic. So libraries have had to make their own decisions and reintroduce services and make them accessible in ways that are respectful of people's attitudes and choices, but fundamentally protects the safety of library workers and library volunteers. So I think the whole process has taken a lot of leadership from heads of service and with actually sort of weekly support from the libraries team at DCMS and others. So on that level, I think libraries have been amazing in terms of transitioning services, and then very pragmatic and kind of methodical in reopening. But I think, I mean, to speak to Ian's point, you know, libraries for me didn't close, they changed. And I think one of the biggest risks looking ahead is that we go back to the old normal. And the old normal wasn't great. You know, we weren't digital enough. The audience was going down year on year. You know, there was a real picture of concern as the backdrop. And now, because of the pandemic, I think we've seen 10 years of digital change happening in 18 months. I think we as a profession have got a newfound sense of purpose and ambition. I think there's a window of opportunity to secure recognition from funders and policymakers, and I'm really keen that we don't talk about going back to the previous normal. We actually take this as a springboard to look ahead to a better future. But also, I think we've got a window of opportunity not just to consolidate the new digital audience, but to reach out to other people who might never have thought of libraries as a thing for them, but suddenly during the pandemic realized that we've got a purpose and a function and a really powerful offer for them. So my hope is that we take this as a moment of renewal, and that we renew that dialogue with the audience, and we start targeting some of the issues that were ongoing sort of long before the pandemic.
Zoe, what are your thoughts on this, and how do you think we could welcome people back?
Well, it's, I mean, I agree with what both Ian and Nick was saying. It's important to recognise that there is still a digital divide. Many people are not confident computer users or don't have computers or Wi-Fi access at all. So there was a huge number of people who we just weren't able to reach during the lockdown. And whilst we were transitioning to reopening, they were still left behind. There's also people, when I think of some of our libraries like Brixton Library, who has a large population of homeless people and people with addiction issues who come into our libraries just because they can see our doors open, they were left behind and lost. They have not had the support. Some council offices still aren't open and they're still not getting that support that they require from the council officers. And libraries are kind of picking up that job, and we not necessarily have the skills, expertise or knowledge to be able to help people in the way that we need to. So in Lambeth, what we're doing is we are building better networks and relationships with different council departments to help those people as well. We can't necessarily help them directly, but we can signpost into the people that can help them better than us. And so it's important that we can create those networks. As you know, you mentioned that we have a higher profile in council, and this is really helping us. If we are supporting their job, then it does make them realise how important library is to the community and to the council as well. So yeah, I think digital is important, but we also need to have, as I've said before, a blended service is what's really important. Not to forget the people that really appreciated having a digital service because it was accessible for them, whether they have disabilities or caring responsibilities, but also not forgetting that a large majority of our community actually use the physical library and do prefer a physical library. That's the reality of it. But I think the digital side is not there just as an alternative, but in addition to what we offer. I think it's important to remember that. And
following on from that, I'm going to ask something with my bookseller hat on very much. I'm going to start with you, Ian. Oh, no. And as we, in terms of blended services, and obviously all the many services that libraries provide, and also a direction towards shared spaces for many libraries and things like that. Is there a danger that we're losing the importance of books in libraries?
Yeah, absolutely. I think most librarians, I would say, went into libraries because they like talking to people. But I think for like of books is quite an important one in there. I noticed with shock and horror, I haven't got a bookshelf behind me, unlike two of the panelists. But yeah, there is I think there is concern about for books. We're noticing in libraries a big increase in the digital lending side. 50-60% increase is what we're looking at in our authority. But in terms of books being returned and being taken out again, well, a lot of books are being returned to us because people have had them for ages, but not as many books are being returned and are being taken out. And I've had anecdotal evidence, and sadly one person directly telling me that, oh, they've discovered Amazon and other things over lockdown, and so they won't be using us anymore because they have these other services and they can afford to use them. Now that's a big concern for those of us who strongly believe in the local presence of public libraries and in our purpose to spread the joy and availability and equal access to reading out there. If some of our clientele are no longer using us, then we need to think of ways of getting them back and encouraging people and making spaces seem safe again for our users to come back. There's an awful lot of transitioning going on at the moment. And I think for all of us, there's tremendous uncertainty. I mean, when I'm going into branches, people are concerned, for library staff are concerned that they're not seeing as many people coming in as they would. This is, we just come from August. August is our busiest month normally in libraries. Lots of kids getting stickers and medals for books. It's normally lovely. This year in a lot of libraries, it's been quiet. Now, I should say a lot of libraries because there's 150 different library authorities just in England, and they're widely varying. And in my own service, we can see differences between different branches and their loans. But generally, the amount of book loans is way lower than we'd expect for August. And that is, I think that's a concern for us. How we sort that out? Well, I'm hoping Zoe and Nick will tell me.
Zoe, would you like to talk a bit about how it's going at Lambeth? Yeah.
Sure. I mean, we have been quite cautious with reopening Lambeth because in Lambeth they had a very high infection rate but low vaccination rate. So we operate in an appointment system. We still are operating an appointment system, but in this month we will be taking that away again. But yes, it has been very quieter because even though we had an appointment system, you would have hoped that it would have been so people would come back so much that we would have been very, very busy, but it was a lot quieter. Like Ian says, August is the busiest month. I'm usually knackered because I've spent 15 years every summer doing a summer reading challenge. And, I'm throwing parties for like 100 children and making slime with 300 kids, that's my normal summer. But this year and last year, it's been very strange. It has been so quiet. The take up for the summer reading challenge is significantly lower. Where a library may sign up hundreds, it's barely reached 100. And that is, with an appointment system, we had the opportunity to ask every child that came into the library to sign up. So we were literally joining every child, and it's still so low. Trying to get into schools has been quite challenging for us, just because schools are reluctant, or they're having issues with their bubbles, and some parents might not people coming in, or they want you to have a test before you come in to visit them for school. It's been quite challenging that way, and that's one of the ways that we really promote activities like the summer reading challenge. And yeah, I am afraid that we won't get back all the people that were used in our libraries before the pandemic. And not only because, as Ian says, because people discovered that there are other ways that they could borrow books, well, they just feel like libraries isn't for them anymore. Maybe they weren't aware of what we were doing during the lockdown, or they didn't want to join any of our things that we're delivering over lockdown. And so they realized like they weren't missing a library service in their life. There's going to be, sadly, there are going to be people who feel like that. So how do we get these people back? I think we kind of, I don't know, I don't have an answer. Nick will tell us instead. But I think we're just going to need a really big campaign. All libraries, whether you're a public librarian, a school librarian, we need to really shout about the benefits that the library service has and what we did during the pandemic, what we're going to do as well. How are we going to change? How are we going to, how are we going to be relevant to their lives? Why do they still need us? Why are we here? And I think we just need to have a very cohesive and voice, really.
So what's the answer, Nick?
Well, there's a few things in there. There's a slightly flippant Douglas Adams quote that I'm really fond of, which is "Lovers of print mistaking the plate for the food." I mean, I think we view it that the fundamental purpose of a library is about empowering people through access to knowledge, information and learning. And I think it's important to recognise libraries are a social and educational good first and foremost. And I've yet to see a better vehicle for that than the book. So I think the quality and range of the book stock and of our reading activities has to be the first order of business. But we also then need to support a wide range of other stuff which empowers people to engage with information. So whether that's local information, health information, we've seen extraordinary work starting in Redbridge and sort of moving out to other libraries around the death positive library. The library is a kind of trusted platform for people to engage with ideas of bereavement and loss. And I think that really goes to the heart of, the kind of super flexible and fundamental platform that libraries can play. But I think, the question, is it books or other things, is kind of the wrong question. I think it's how we present the right mix of books, digital information, really compelling experiences, public programming, safe spaces, to keep people engaged and engage with new people. But I was looking a lot, the railway companies are on a marketing mission right now, so you can't watch 5 minutes of television without seeing an advertisement from a rail company. And I was thinking, why are they doing that? Because I know trains exist. And what they're doing is re-establishing their place in the public psyche, and they're reminding people about travel and companionship. And I would love to do the same thing with libraries. I'd like to re-establish the fact that we're here, we're safe, we're trusted, we're valuable. We have amazing reading experiences and brilliant, unexpected experiences. So our big focus for that promotion is Libraries Week, which is the 4th to the 10th of October, where we're really going to come out swinging and remind the public all of the things that the library has to offer.
Could you talk a bit more about Libraries Week, or is it, yeah?
Sure. So Libraries Week, the annual celebration of the best that libraries have to offer, and we've had some amazing recent years. So the most recent one, we had children designing the library of the future out of Lego, and we had hundreds of entries, over 2/3 of which had the library in a garden in a green space, which I think is fascinating and something we have to think about for the kind of green libraries movement. But this year we're looking at libraries taking action and changing lives, and that's about the really unexpected things that a library can do to bring people together, address the needs of the elderly, the vulnerable, the isolated, be a real place for their community to come back together. So brilliantly, actually, we've had an amazing response. We've got libraries up and down the country, schools, public, all sorts of libraries. And they're going to be showing off exactly what we can do for people and the difference we make to their daily lives. So it's just, if I'm allowed to plug, www.librariesweek.org.uk.
Great, we'll allow that, yeah. Thank you very much. And yeah, something that I wanted to get your thoughts on is how lockdown and the digital boom, how that might have exposed some problems with the digital model for libraries where ebooks and audiobooks are concerned. Can I come to you, Zoe, first of all?
Yeah, so one of my roles in Lambeth is that I'm a digital development librarian. So I deal with the ebook, audiobooks, e-lending offer. And it's always been quite apparent that the licensing model for a lot of the ebooks and audiobooks is just not fit for purpose. And with the pandemic, it was just illuminating. Most publishers only allow one user per book. So if you have a very popular book, you've got to buy multiple books. That doesn't take into account the cost of ebooks, which are significantly higher than a physical book, which you don't get discounts. And the price range varies. Some can be £8, some can be £50. I've seen some for £100. And if you've got a popular book and people are putting places holds on that, how can you really afford to spend hundreds and hundreds of pounds just trying to satisfy one title reservations on them, titles on those reservations? It's ridiculous. The multiple downloads would be better, which you do have on some audiobooks, but obviously you have to keep rebuying those. The fact that you can only get some books for 2 years before it expires, then you have to rebuy again. We wouldn't do that in a library service. We'd only rebuy again if it was falling apart or something. So I did see a comment about the number of issues for books. There's no way it was going to match the physical loans in the last year, because the lending model for ebooks and audiobooks doesn't support it, doesn't allow us to do that. So, we will have a much smaller percentage of book loans in the e-lending model than we will have physicals. That's just a reality. And we don't have the budgets to be able to satisfy the ebook audience, which has grown, and it may have dropped slightly as some people do prefer physical books, but it's still going to be larger than what it was pre-pandemic. And there's no way you can satisfy those audience as well as your physical audience, because you've only got a certain amount of budget for your books. And it has been very, very frustrating. But I'm hoping that I'm seeing lots of nods, and so I'm hoping that everyone feels the same as me. And we're going to come out fighting for better ebook and audiobook licensing models.
Nick, you wrote a comment piece on this, didn't you, for our edition?
Did, and yeah, thank you for the opportunity. I mean, if people kind of participating today haven't read it yet, I hugely recommend, not just because of my article, but the whole issue is fantastic, the library issue. But yeah, I think it's crazy. I think our thinking about the ebook hasn't moved on since the Victorian era. So we're treating an infinitely reproducible digital file that can be transmitted around the world instantly as though it were a paperback, and that's nonsense, really. And I think the sadness for me is that instead of going through that channel shift together, publishers and libraries kind of we're at odds to some extent. So I still hear some comments from some parts of the publishing industry that the role of libraries is to give books away for free. And that's fundamentally misunderstanding what we're doing here. We're about creating readers and driving richer reading experiences. We're a massively important part of the reading and book ecosystem. And we're driving value into that system in a way that could really add to the bottom line success of publishers. And we share so much with publishers about diversity and representation in books, about the green agenda and being more accountable for the supply chain, about being a more diverse workforce. So I think what we would love to see, as Zoe said, during the pandemic, some publishers stepped up with much more flexibility. Their multi-user licenses, more flexible terms, better, richer digital access via the platforms. We would love to see that not as a temporary fix, but as a new normal. We'd love to go forward in a new spirit of collaboration with publishers, and then to have a really grown-up dialogue about what it is that libraries can add to the bottom line of the publisher and how we can work together to create a more sustainable ecosystem. And I just think there's a better way than the way we're doing it right now.
Ian, you had your head in your hands at one point. Yeah,
well, some of what Nick was saying was painfully familiar to me. I did feel a headache coming on. When it comes for prices, I buy ebooks, the audio. Some of the prices that we're forced to pay is like a punch in the face. It's almost insulting how much we're expected to pay, and we can't we can't do it. I mean, we went into library services are here to promote reading. We're here to provide access to reading for people, and part of that is producing a wonderful audience for authors and for booksellers to get their content out there to people who wouldn't necessarily spend £15 on a new hardback. I mean, I laughed at Nick when he was saying that we're treating ebooks like paperbacks. I wish we were treating ebooks like paperbacks. We're treating them like the most expensively leather-bound, tooled, gold-plated books there are in some circumstances. If I can put a nod out to Hatchet at this point, who are refusing to let us have their books at all. Thank you very much for that, Hatchet. We need a conversation with you, please. We'd like the same legal role for ebooks as we have for printed books. We can buy printed books at the same cost, and yet for ebooks, it's like, no, thou shalt not do that, because although you're absolutely fine for printed books, somehow you're an evil competitor when it comes to digital side. I just don't get it. We are there to promote books and audience and to encourage discovery of books, so that the people who will borrow something from us will then buy copies of it from elsewhere, and the people that can't afford to buy anything, that's a lost market for publishers anyway, so we're providing some income for them. So I just don't get it. There's a lot of caution there, and it's killing or it's artificially limiting a market which would be of benefit to us, and it hurts. We're not the competitor. The competitor starts with an A, ends in an N, it's got Z in the middle of it. And we need to boost each other.
Yeah. Also, the fact that some publishers are exclusive to certain providers is also another issue as well.
Yeah.
You tapped into a rich vein of feeling here, Heloise.
Yes.
It makes you very angry.
It's quite like a therapy session, isn't it? Yeah. And do you think there's some frustration from readers when they don't understand why they have to wait such a long time?
Yeah.
You're waiting 3 months for a book. I mean, you don't understand why you would do that when it's a digital book. You just assume that anyone could have it. It's not a physical book in the library where they may understand why they're accused.
Yeah, I think the whole attitude is defensive. It's kind of, how can we apply frictions in a digital space to offer the same measure of protection we had as a publisher in the physical space? And that's fundamentally the wrong way round. I think instead of defensive, it needs to be proactive and progressive, and actively getting the best books out there to create the best reading experiences, to create readers. So, you know, I do think there's a dialogue to be had. Not all publishers are the same by any means. And I think we could be talking about how we resolve some of these questions in a much more sensible way.
I'm still too angry to speak, personally.
Sorry, what was that? And in terms of the price, how the prices range for ebooks and audiobooks, is that how something that might cost £100, is that if it's a particularly popular book, or
there's no rhyme or reason to it. I can see it's sometimes popular books. It's sometimes that publishers just think, oh, right, we're going to charge 60 quid for that. And no, there's any rationale we can see, because it doesn't have to be. The publisher can charge what they want for the book, and we either pay it or it doesn't come in. And when it comes to the public don't understand that. The public think that we're being deliberately failing in our task by not getting that book. We get blamed because the book which they're wanting is with an ebook provider which we don't have, or with an ebook provider who just refuses to pay to have it in libraries, full stop.
And I think we've sort of had a conversation with a number of publishers about this, and it has to be said, it's not just public libraries. I mean, you know, schools, universities. There's an amazing campaign which you've covered in the Bookseller in the HE sector called the ebook SOS investigation, and this issue is an issue across all types of library throughout everybody's life stage. And you know, the publishers made a case that it was because ebooks had added features which justified the price, which a PDF does not have that many added features that justifies that kind of price differential. I think what is interesting though is publishers are saying different books perform very differently for them in terms of establishing a business model. And that's fine. That's a dialogue we can have. We can kind of engage with publishers and understand what they need in order to create a sustainable business. We're not here to stop them being able to operate. But I think what's really missing is that dialogue right now, is being able to sort of sit down together and say, okay, we're all adding value. We all need to be able to pay the bills. And ultimately, we need to create great reading experiences for readers. So let's work together to do that.
Okay. So that's obviously a big priority for the next few years. And I feel like we've invited publishers to have a think and see if there could be more open dialogue on this. What other priorities do you think are the most important over the next few years? I'll start with you, Ian.
So many priorities. Now I'm calming down after talking about ebook. I think the key for us initially is to just keep on reminding councils and government of how useful we are, because there's always a spending round the corner, and I was expecting, to be honest, I think a lot of us were expecting quite deep cuts this year to library services, and that has, apart from in one or two very famous examples, not happened, at least not publicly. So that's good. We've got a breathing space, and we have to push that through Libraries Week and through other things in order to keep in the council mind and the government mind how useful we are. It was all very well for government to define library workers as essential workers, which they did over lockdown. So please keep funding us. That's kind of like one of the priorities. A big priority for me personally is to keep the mix between the digital and the physical side. Something which came to me forcefully, Road to Damascus moment during lockdown, was if we're doing a physical event, that is before, which we did and we didn't think about it, if we don't stream that, if we don't record it and share it, we are limiting the audience to that. It's almost like an equalities matter. Why are we saying, like, you have to be in that particular place at that particular time to have that? Why aren't we streaming everything that we're doing? If we've got it on digital, why haven't we got screens in our libraries playing it so you can come in and you can see it? So there's some wonderful things which I think lockdown has given, like, of, oh yeah, we can do that now moments. I just like to put a shout out to this Zoom thing which we're doing now, which is amazing. I mean, I'm not in London and I'm able to talk at it. It's astounding. I'm hoping that has some advantages with it all. And yes, so many priorities. The first one is shouting out, as Nick has said. We're back again. Hello schools. Hello everyone else. And then everything else follows from that.
Yeah.
You're nodding, Nick. Did you want to add something?
Yeah, no, I really would. I mean, I think completely agree with Ian. I mean, I think our overarching priority is actually equality. Fundamentally, there's a problem with digital exclusion. There's a problem with library haves and have-nots in rich and poor areas. We're living in a society with deep and entrenched income inequality, and people are locked in a poverty trap, which is partly a literacy trap as well. And so, the function of libraries has always been to create a more equal and just society. And I think we have to keep focused on that as we recover. In terms of political engagement, there are kind of three priorities we're looking at. There's placemaking, literacy recovery, and local business and enterprise support. So, those are the agendas that we're hearing are going to be key when we come around to the next spending review. And I think we need to be able to provide the evidence. So for the sector, our key priorities are data and evidence, because we're really, really bad at producing quality evidence that justifies our assertions, and we need to get good at it. We are an information profession. The money, and as Ian says, there is a spending review coming up in October, but more fundamentally than that, public libraries are a kind of single funder model right now, although a very plural model, and heavily attached to local government, which is itself suffering badly. And so we think we need a broader, more plural, more inclusive funding model. And then finally, leadership. There's an amazing generation of talent coming through libraries, and they're going to take up the reins and they're going to solve all the problems we've left behind. And so how do we really empower the people who are going to take up the charge for the next generation?
Would you like to add anything on this, Zoe?
I would just say, yeah, like Nick said, as people who work in libraries, make sure your staff don't get left behind. Those people who maybe don't have the skills, make sure they are upskilled and embed them for future. If you're recruiting, maybe include something about digital tech skills, actually pay. If you have training budgets, because so many people don't have training budgets and they get cut straight away, to send people on training courses. If you're writing a new strategy to embed and make it sustainable, that's what we're doing in Lambeth. We're writing a 5-year strategy, and we're trying to make it inclusive as possible, so that when it does come to time to fight cuts, because I'm afraid it seems inevitable, we're fine for now, but we won't always be, and that we can prove how useful and valuable we are as a library service, and that we've got a strategy where we have our communities, the councillors, anyone that's involved, any stakeholders, to contribute to it. And so we can show that everyone has, it's valuable to everyone, because we've included them all in the plans that we have for the library service, I would say.
And we'll come to questions in a couple of minutes, but I just have one or two other questions that I wanted to ask you first. Nick, could we talk a bit about the pattern of closures and openings the last 18 months or so? Because when we spoke recently, you talked about how there are actually some libraries opening, particularly in the north. Could you tell us a bit about that?
Sure. Yeah. I mean, we try and keep track of what's going on out there. And as Ian says, actually, we haven't seen quite the impact yet. I mean, I think some councils are making decisions right now. To an extent, emergency relief money is still sort of washing around the system. So the real realities of new baseline haven't quite hit. So we are thinking there'll be changes, but we've also, really enjoyed talking to some councils that are very kind of ambitious and aspirational for their libraries. So, Kingston Council in Southwest London's invested 7 million, I think it is, in library refurb and redevelopment. There are over 100, according to one of the design companies, refurbishments going on for school libraries. We've seen new sort of multifunctional sites being planned. And in fact, we've started being in touch with some of the councils. I think there's one, the Daneham Centre in Doncaster, where we wrote to the council to say how much it was welcome to see a council investing in its community by investing in libraries. And I think there is there's a very negative rhetoric sometimes, and obviously and rightly we focus on the libraries that are at risk and how can we do more to defend them. We don't always do as good a job at celebrating the new ones and the ones that are being invested in and built. And they are palaces of the people, and every kid deserves to grow up having an inspirational place on their high street. I mean, that's just a given in a society I want to live in. So what we're doing is reaching out to councils and saying, let's really recognise and celebrate where those investments are being made. And I think that the point I made when you and I were talking previously was it does seem to track to when a place has a sense of aspiration for its people, and so we're seeing a real kind of surge of economic ambition in the north and the northeast, and a desire for new skills, new industries, and that tends to track back to, well, let's fund libraries because that creates people who have great ideas who go on to invent businesses. And so what we want is that same level of ambition for the community on behalf of every council everywhere, because we think that's what the community deserves.
And could you talk a bit about school libraries and how you feel that they've been doing over the last, over lockdown and currently?
I think we've got some school library colleagues on the participants today who are much better positioned to answer. But they've been, I mean, everybody I think is aware of my deep and abiding love of school librarians, because they are fundamental to the learning experience, pastoral care, giving children the library habit, inspiring them to learn. And I think school librarians did an astonishing job, really. So most of them, almost overnight, when their school communities had to close and the kids had to transition to online learning, commissioned resources, taught teachers how to be digital, made sure kids had devices and connectivity where they could, that they became essentially a kind of emergency service for children who are forced into online learning. And they've adapted to that with, traditional and very familiar school librarian creativity. So brilliant and innovative ways of keeping kids engaged and inspired. And we all know, the last 18 months has been hardest for children. It's hit literacy, it's hit economic inequality, it's hit kids that don't like to learn through a screen and like to learn socially and together with people. And throughout all of that, school librarians have been back for them. We launched a sort of coronavirus information service for school librarians in the early days, and we've sort of maintained that throughout this process. And it's just been absolutely inspirational, as it has with public libraries, but to hear how school librarians have adapted to this. But in both cases, I think it's because there's an absolute laser-guided focus on the human being, the learner, the kid, or the member of the community, and what gives them greatest dignity and opportunity. And that's incredible as an institution. There aren't many institutions that believe fundamentally in your right to dignity and opportunity, and that's what libraries do everywhere. And that's why they need building and championing absolutely everywhere.
And just to say, we have a great comment piece from Cressida Cow on school libraries. So yeah, another reason to check out the libraries edition. And this will be the last question from me, and then I'll go to the questions, some of the questions in the chat. If you had to distill our learnings into one takeaway from the last 18 months, or perhaps one thing that people could do to help libraries right now, what would that be? I'll start with you, Zoe.
Just one thing.
Well, could be more if you're inspired.
Use them. Use your libraries will be the most important thing. And talk about them. Talk how great they are to everyone you meet, your family, your neighbours, your friends, your councillors, your local MP. Just always try and promote them. That's the very basic, easiest thing I think people can do to support their library service. I'm sure Ian and Nick will have other ideas of what they can do.
Ian, what would you like to add on this?
Yes, I agree with Zoe. Using us would be good, but I mean, that is all. I mean, that's mainly in our domain. To be fair, I mean, we can't rely on people coming in and using us. We need to sell our product out there to people. And one of the things I not mentioned over lockdown was we didn't have a national digital presence in libraries, which was really So there is a hope for one of those next year. So that would be nice. Talk to councillors individually. It's councillors. It's your county councillor. It's for service. It's for council that runs your library service. If you individually take the time to phone, or if you know a councillor, to talk to them, that has a tremendous impact on that person. More than the petition, more than anything else. It's talk to individual councillors in your service, and if you do know anyone that can get a national digital presence sorted before next year, that would be good as well.
On to you, Nick.
Fantastic. I don't think I can say it as eloquently as Zoe and Ian did, but I guess my distillation would be every aspect of the kind of just, sustainable and connected world we're trying to build starts in the library. So we need to build more of them, build them up, not close them down.
Great. And now I will come on to the questions. So the first one is, any advice on starting a school library?
Get a school librarian. I mean, somebody once told, I'm sorry to leap in, but somebody once said, you can put a school librarian into an empty building and they'll turn it into a library. And unfortunately, our government's taken that as educational policy for the last 20 years. But you know, a space doesn't mean anything. The Department for Education just published a 114-page reading strategy without mentioning library, and they mentioned libraries once in the foreword, and spent a lot of time talking about book corners. You know, I think the best place to start a school library is to talk to a school librarian. And then there are lots of options from there in terms of how you can stock that space. You know, if you don't have the resources for a dedicated professional, talk to the school library service, talk to the local public library service. But it starts with a conversation with a librarian who can help drive that process.
Would you like to add anything, Ian?
If your local council is still lucky enough to have a schools library service, and some of them still do, then talk to your local public library service and schools library service. If they don't have one, then you can Google education library service, a school library service, and see a local one. And a few of them are downright predatory now, and will try and get your business from a neighbouring council area and so on. There's also ASCL, the Association for School Librarians Education. I forget what the acronym entirely means. ASCEL, who can help as well.
And the SLA, the School Library Association.
Oh, duh, yes! Duh, yes, them!
and the Silip School Libraries Group, of course.
And the Silip School Library.
Did you want to add anything, Zoe?
No, I think everyone's covered everything. As a public librarian who is a children's specialist, I can help to a certain extent, but there are things that school librarians do and know, and they are in a better place to help you. So do go to those places which Ian mentioned and Nick mentioned.
And I've got another question here, which is, I work for an indie publisher and we are working to make our ebooks widely available to library services, but aren't seeing the sales yet. Does the panel have any advice for indie presses looking to improve their sales through libraries, especially of ebooks?
I can start answering it, I guess. There are two things I'd say. One is we've actually launched a magazine to help with this. So there's a quarterly magazine and listings guide called Pen and Ink that we publish, which is goes out to all public libraries and school libraries and Silip members, which features listings from indie publishers, because we're trying to help people discover the long, kind of brilliantly creative long tail of books. So do Google that one. The other thing I would say is kind of figure out the procurement chain for public libraries, which Ian and Zoe will be much better positioned. So make sure that your books are featured in the platforms and distributors that libraries work with. But I'll hand off to Ian and Zoe for that one.
Yeah, definitely. For purchasing of ebooks, we often are tied into one supplier, of which for a few, mainly BoAbox, I'd have to say, seem to be the big one. So if you get your title listed on there, then each and every library service that purchases ebooks will at least have a look at it. It will come in front of their eyes, and that's. I mean, for personal email, you can't deride so far. I mean, that is quite useful. If I receive an email from someone as a librarian, I'm physically incapable of ignoring it. I have to reply, so it means I have to look at it. But many public library services are tied to particular suppliers. So if you get in with suppliers, then you get in with us.
But you do have to remember that discoverability is the key. If you're an indie supplier on an ebook you're trying to sell, you are competing with the big publishers with limited funds. From being frank, we're going to go for the bestsellers, the things that we know are going to issue really well. It's much harder to get your ebook than a physical book into the library. So maybe in addition to finding out what platform the library is using, as Ian says, you might want to email the individual libraries to say, we've got these books on this platform. Would you consider purchasing them as an ebook? Maybe be able to give them a copy so they could see whether it's in physical form or ebook, only temporarily, so they can actually have a look at the content that you are trying to promote. Because it's going to be very hard for an indie publisher to kind of be discoverable in this big book world with so many books being published.
I just saw a question pop up for you, Ian. about the name of the purchasers?
So for a few for printed books, there is Askew's and Peter's are the ones I'm aware of. So we may know of others. So if you Google Askew's libraries, then you get them for others. For ebooks, there's a few. As I say, BookSeller is the big one, but there are lots of other ones there that you can get into. I don't know their names so well. So Zoe and Nick may, but I don't.
Well, RB Digital is no longer in this country. It's now Overdrive. So they have quite a big slice of the pie now as well. With BorrowBooks, I would say those two are the biggest suppliers for ebooks and audiobooks in this country.
Great. Well, thank you very much. We're running out of time now. So unless there's any closing comments that you guys wanted to mention, I will just thank you all. And yeah, say thanks so much for joining me and providing a really interesting, lively discussion. And yeah, just to say again that we have the library's issue free to read for a week online. We have an ongoing 20% offer, 20% off for subscriptions for librarians if you type library into the promo code. And thank you to our sponsors, Overdrive and Penguin Random House. And thanks to all the people that provided comments and questions in the chat as well. And yeah, have a lovely Friday. And I think my colleague who was hosting the Zoom originally, her computer has crashed. So we're all going to have to individually leave. So thank you very much. And yeah, have a lovely rest of day.
Thanks everyone. Bye-bye.
Thank you. Bye.